Hello, my fellow seekers. Welcome to Into the Work, therapy for empaths, seekers, and the intuitively driven, where you have front row seats to therapy sessions and expert interviews that will help you define the important work that you're here to do. So I guess you actually have something better than front row seats. You practically have a seat on my couch. That's right, you will have unrestricted access to actual sessions with real people, exploring real life issues. You will continue to be inspired by powerful conversations with experts and healers that might just share exactly what it is that you need to hear to get unstuck. I am Michelle Pauverman. I am a recovering people pleaser and former anxiety-driven empath, turned now mostly grounded psychotherapist and intuitive coach. I have been helping people for almost 20 years manage their limiting beliefs and anxiety to finally stop the self-sabotage and step into their gifts. I created this podcast, Into the Work, to give you a place to learn more about yourself and give you actionable strategies to finally move those roadblocks holding you back so you can go for what you want. Above all else, my hope is that this podcast is a catalyst for your awakening. If you're listening, you've already taken a step towards getting off of autopilot, and our next steps together will be taken episode by episode, waking you up to the possibilities, the new ways of thinking and being, so that you can stretch into that next level of your story. The spark has already been lit, and my friend, this is a journey from spark to brilliance. So together, let's light a fire. Hi, and welcome back to the show, Into the Work. Before we jump in and get started, I just wanted to remind you that there's still time to sign up for my release group healing that I'm having next week on October 21st, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is an online Zoom event you can do from the comfort of your own home, and I'll be hosting a small group healing using modalities such as emotion code to help you clear your own trapped emotions and energetic ties that will help you heal what is holding you back. So the event will close once it's full, so I wanted to invite you one more time to go ahead, link is in the show notes, go check it out, and sign up before it closes. All right, so let's go ahead and get started because today we are talking about ancestral trauma. And we're going to answer the question, is it possible to have ancestral traumas passed down to us? Which, spoiler alert, it is, or I wouldn't be having a whole episode on it. In this episode, we're going to also explore the basics of epigenetics as well as what I've learned about energetic and spiritual explanations about what gets passed down to us from our ancestors. We will also discuss energy cords and how they have been impacting you and creating that strange or unexplainable connection and coincidences that you might be experiencing with other people. And you'll see how they're connected. So let's dive in. For starters, what is ancestral wounding, aka ancestral trauma, generational trauma, or soul line wounds? I'm probably going to be using all of those terms because I jump from one to the next. As ancestral trauma refers to the emotional, psychological, and even physical traumas or patterns that are passed down through generations in a family lineage. These can manifest as unresolved issues, limiting beliefs, behaviors, or even health problems that seem to reoccur in a family. Even though we have not directly experienced the original trauma, we do know that the experience of the generations before us can have an intense impact on us during our own lifetime here. So in epigenetics, which is the study of change on genetic expression, they study the factors that create changes in which a gene shuts itself off or turns itself on. Epigenetics studies the chemical markers that appear on genes after big events occur. So a trauma, for instance, occurs, and these markers that control the genes show up and change the expression of the DNA. In some way, it's sort of like we have our ancestors' history, their memories in our cells. So while the exact mechanism can be interpreted through different lenses, such as spiritual, psychological, or as I just said, epigenetic, for you and I, it looks like the unexplained nightmares and fears that play on repeat, but make no sense to us. It can be the emotional patterns we have had that just don't line up. Like perhaps maybe you felt deep sadness throughout your life, or grief that we just can't explain, or why maybe chronic anxiety is showing up as often as it is, that maybe you're just shrugging off saying, oh, that just runs in my family. We can experience specific fears, like a fear of heights or strangulation or claustrophobia, that really aren't from us or from this life. They don't belong to us. They just show up in our bodies, right? In our emotions. We can also experience physical issues like chronic back pain and migraines, or any physical issues chronically that have ties to our ancestral wounding. Our ancestral wounding makes us sensitive and more likely to experience that which our parents and ancestors have experienced. So you're looking for repeating family patterns. So in your life, you're looking, do you see generations of health issues? Do you see generations of addiction or abuse? How about inherited emotional responses? Perhaps you see chronic anxiety in your family, feelings of guilt or shame that don't seem to have a clear source, feeling stuck in life without a clear reason why. When again, that grief, that deep emotional pain that feels bigger than your own real personal experience. And of course, those health problems that mirror those of your ancestors without a clear medical explanation sometimes. It can also be seen that although we have this ancestral wounding throughout the bloodline for all those that went before you, it's also possible that you're experiencing the brunt of it, that yours seem heightened and worse than everybody else's. And we're going to tap into that a little bit in this conversation today. And that can be because you're the person who's here to heal it, right? You're the one that's designated, that's going to do this work that other people were not assigned. And we'll talk more about that later. So a really fascinating study was done called the cherry blossom study. I share this one a lot when I'm using emotion code, which is a healing modality that I use with clients to help people understand how very real this is. In 2013, the study was done, and it was referred to, as I said, the cherry blossom study at Emerson University. They separated mice and blew the scent of cherry blossoms on the mice while they simultaneously also received a shock. So the mice quickly developed a significant stress response to the scent of the cherry blossoms after they were conditioned with the shock. So cherry blossoms, shocking, and then that equals the conditioning, which is the fear stress response. Now, what is really interesting is that when these mice had babies, they were separated. And when the cherry blossom scent was introduced to the offspring, they had the same stress response. Even more interesting is that multiple generations of mice, so grandbabies and great-grandbabies, were separated and introduced to the scent and continued to display this big stress response. And they also found that the size of the brain changed and grew bigger in the new generations of mice to make room for these new receptors that were specifically dedicated to the smell of the cherry blossoms. Fascinating, right? So we see how this stuff is passed down to us in our cells and our genes. So studies have been done on Holocaust survivors and their children's sensitivity and likelihood of developing similar PTSD symptoms in their own lives. And down the line of children, similar studies have also shown similar results for children of 9/11 survivors as well. So I do also want to point out that it's not all bad. I just want to point out there's also really good stuff that gets passed down and impacts your genetic expression for you as well as your descendants. We are literally the living embodiment of our ancestors' stories and how they survived those stories, what happened for them, what they went through. But we are also created in their strengths and their gifts and their courage. It's not all bad. In fact, we have energetic cords with our familial line, as well as others both here on Earth and beyond. And I'm talking about these cords today, specifically so that you can also learn how to heal them. But these energetic cords, in part, are the reason why you think of somebody just before they call you. Or perhaps you have sensed something was wrong with a loved one before you had actual confirmation. Listen, there is a lot our pea-sized little perspectives can't possibly grasp on how vast this whole energy, universe, God thing is. But I personally know for sure that these cords of energy exist, and I have experienced this connection so many times in so many ways throughout my life. Actually, not long ago, I was practicing a clearing and grounding technique that I teach on the regular because, hey, we all need to be clearing our bodies and grounding our energy every day. So if you're not doing that, get on board because it's going to help you quite a bit. But as I was moving out all the energies that don't belong to me, that was the specific task at the moment. I was starting with releasing all that does not belong to me in my system. This person that I have not thought about in probably 15 years, maybe 20, came to me. I saw their face. I thought of them as I was doing the clearing. And I thought, that's a strange thing, right? I have not seen them or thought of them in years. And when I was done, I finished up and then I was checking my email before my next client arrived. Sure enough, there they were. I had received an email from them while I was doing the clearing. I kid you not. So now every time I see or sense or think of somebody when I'm doing the clearing, I now just know that the cord between us has been activated. I can reach out to them if I want to and have them say, wow, I was just thinking about you. How weird. Or I can send them some love energetically and move on with my day. It just can mean that they were thinking of me, or perhaps maybe they came across something I did online and they were reading it and that activated the cord, but they come into our energy field through this cord. So now their connection to me is showing up. And so when you're clearing your body and your field, you can see that sometimes. So you see these cords in their natural state are quite beautiful, right? But sometimes energetic cords need to be cleared and healed because they also can drain our energy. You may have heard of cord cutting as a practice for this very reason. Now, cord cutting is an energetic healing practice used to release or sever unhealthy emotional, mental, or spiritual ties between people or other souls here and beyond. Okay, that's where it will come in for our ancestral healing. But these cords are believed to form through our interactions and our relationships with people. Of course, our ancestral cords are created through our bloodline, through our energy connections, because we are related. Now, the practice of cord cutting helps to clear attachments that no longer serve us. It brings us a sense of freedom, clarity, and emotional release. So what are these cords? So these cords are basically really just invisible energetic connections that form between individuals, binding them through shared experiences, as I said, emotions, energies, and they can show up in most any relationship. So for instance, I'm going to name a few instances where you might want to check on whether or not you have some cords to cut. So first, you're going to look at romantic relationships. You may feel built up resentment. These are the cues where you're looking to see if there's cords there that need to be healed. If you have built up resentment and or desires to fix or change your partner, right? That creates cords of discontent. So anything in the relationship that feels toxic or unhealthy, that might be draining you or your partner, can be cleared. Perhaps you've been through a breakup and you're having a really difficult time moving on, and cord cutting might be able to help you. Releasing the person and cutting the energetic cords that are keeping you from being able to let go and move forward might make a difference. Now, I want to highlight to you here as we move on to family dynamics that cutting cords does not mean that you are detaching from another person. It does not mean you are disconnecting from them, because that can feel yucky, right? Especially people that we love. In the case of the breakup where you want to detach and you want to release and move on and you don't want this person in your life, that's true too. But also you can do cord cutting not as a form of disconnection, but actually quite the opposite, that when you cut the cord between you and a family member, let's say, you actually can show up fully in your own energy and be whole. You're allowing them to show up in their full energy being whole. No one's being drained any longer, and you can be in your heart space and have good boundaries. That's the goal. So in your family dynamics, you may notice that you feel bound to certain family members through guilt or obligation or unresolved trauma. And these cords can keep you stuck in old family dynamics, right? Old patterns, preventing you from really growing in a way that you know you really want to grow. And so cutting cords with family members can be really important. Friendships also, many of us have been through having friendships that drain you. Perhaps they drain your energy through negativity or criticism or unhealthy expectations. You may feel obligated to maintain the relationship even though it negatively impacts your well-being. In those cases, as just examples, but in those cases, that would be a wonderful opportunity to cord cut. Again, you could decide to have this person in your life if you choose to. You would show up from a different heart space. You would be whole. You would release any attachments to them, and you would step into holding greater boundaries with them, right? So when you cut the cords and release that energy that's draining you, you're feeling stronger to step into your power and say, this isn't okay with me, right? If you're not able to do that, then you might really need to check the friendship or figure out what that looks like. They can occur in lots of situations, professional or client relationships. Cords can really happen in any situation that has conflict, trauma, anything unresolved emotions within it, for anybody, with anybody, even our kids. We can create cords of energy that are not serving either us or our kids. Like when we feel frustrated that they're not being who we want them to be or how we want them to be, right? Or behaving the way we want them to. We can start creating these, these patterns of how we're relating to them and communicating with them. And in this sort of unresolved tension, there creates cords of energy. And that cord of energy is draining your kids and is draining you. By releasing this with our kids and cutting the cords, we're not disconnecting from them. We're actually making both of us whole so that we can connect more completely. We can come from the heart space, right? So while not all cords are negative, we're obviously focusing on the ones that are here because we want to help you to heal, especially when it comes to your ancestral trauma. But some connections can just be downright draining and toxic. So I'm just giving you quick things to look for because I think this is also really important to your well-being. So understanding what the flags are. So one is unresolved emotions. If you are in a relationship with somebody or you have relationships where you see and feel and know there are unresolved emotions, there are cords of energy. If there is an unhealthy attachment, if you are in a relationship with somebody and either one of you on either end has sort of maybe obsessive thoughts or codependency traits or emotional reliance on the other person to make them feel better, right? There's some attachment there that feels unhealthy. That is also a cord that can be released. And energetic imbalances, feeling drained or anxious or stuck within the connection of somebody else. That also is a cord that can be released. Sometimes these cords can extend beyond this lifetime. We can even have cords that tie into our past life experiences, as well as our ancestral trauma. In this case, cord cutting can help sever the connections to those things and clear the way for deeper healing. But here's the thing, just because you cut a tie with your ancestor's trauma does not mean you have to cut the tie with your ancestor. So when you sit down to do an ancestral cord cutting, you can be very clear that you want to keep the ties between you and your ancestor, but clear the trauma response that you're no longer going to carry on in the next generations and you want to heal the previous generations. You also may not want to have a connection with a previous ancestor for some very good reason, right? So you're also allowed to disconnect that connection in some ways. Now, I believe that this connection, usually with our ancestors, is truly beckoning for us to heal, right? It is an opportunity for healing and break generational curses and painful patterns. In a way, this deep connection that binds us with our ancestors can also serve us. It's as if they are with us as we hear the calling deep within us to change the patterns and get unstuck, to unravel it all and heal that which has collectively been holding us all back, right? All those people before you. Perhaps this collective soul evolution is preparation to move through what once was for them and what could be for all these future generations. And when we tap into this incredible connection, we can also see how we may be evolving one generation at a time as a planet. I realize I'm getting big here, but that is really quite fascinating that each generation is just clearing and has this potential to shift and heal and move through as a planet. Now, I want you to consider that before you came down here to be born, you agreed to the task of this life. You were assigned these people as your family. While of course you are allowed free will and a million possible paths along the way for you to choose from, I think regardless of your choices, the lesson will be of the same theme. I think regardless of what choices we make, we still have to learn the lessons we're here to learn. And so there'll be a certain theme regardless, but you get to, choose your own adventure, right? You get to choose your experiences. I believe that on a soul level, we have signed up for exactly what our parents have to offer. That the pain and the glory of whatever that experience is what we need to move through in this life for our own evolution. Now that can be hard for us to wrap our heads around when we grow up in an extremely abusive parents or extremely painful experiences. There is by no means any quote unquote deserving good or bad. There is just the healing experience that we are after as souls. But I do believe that each generation is here to surpass the generation before us in our healing and awakening on some level. And here is another lesson I've learned. And it's not exactly fair to expect previous generations before us, aka your parents and your grandparents, to function at the same level of consciousness as you. Because they are where they're at for their generation, right? And they evolved, likely they evolved beyond their parents, and their parents probably evolved beyond their parents in some way. But it's not really quite fair for us to expect them to have the same consciousness level that you have risen to. You have a new perspective, a new bird's eye view of things, of the world, and so it can be difficult, but it's a discussion probably for another time. I just think it's an interesting point. But I share this as a way to point out that the ancestral line is purposeful and it serves our development. And all that you face, you are equipped to not only survive, but heal and transmute those wounds of your ancestors through love so that our descendants can learn and evolve beyond us. That all said, there is also another incredible thing that I want to share with you. When you clear the trauma or wound from yourself, and there are various ways to do this, which we will highlight in a moment, you clear it for the line of people before you and after you. Just consider that possibility. One person gets to end an entire generational cycle of pain. Let's say you're an empathic soul here. That's you. And you're listening to this podcast right now because you are drawn towards healing. You're a seeker. You're interested and drawn towards becoming and expanding and healing and growing. And if we sign up to be here in this life, as we discussed, you agree to the terms and conditions, right? Then perhaps it's possible that you have a purpose to break the cycle and heal all the people before you and after you. Perhaps that's your destiny. Now, I do want to highlight that it It is possible that other people in your family have not had it quite as quote unquote bad as you. It's possible that you're the one riddled with the most pain in your body, or you're the one that's going through all these emotional things that sort of mirrors some things that they're going through, but yours seems worse. It is possible that the expression of your ancestral trauma is heightened in you. I think it's possible that it's on purpose. Because if that's true, I also think that you are the one to break the chains, right? You are the one to do the work. I think that there are individuals in bloodlines that have a calling to heal and shift the destiny of that bloodline. And that could be you. Now, I just want to share that while I have experienced helping people to heal ancestral trauma, and I have had them recognize shifts in living relatives, I've actually even had them notice shifts in their partners who are not related to them, but it is not always that clear. This healing is on the soul level first, okay? So this is on the soul level. The personality, however, is tricky. We have addictions and attachments to our pain. It is possible that living relatives continue to choose to do what they know. Even if your work provides an awakening or a stirring within them, it's possible they choose not to change. They have free will here. They have the ability to make choices in that and still continue to do what they're doing. Even if your work provides an awakening or stirring, it does not mean that it changes them. Perhaps in time you see a shift that occurs. Maybe it's not overnight. Maybe it's a year later. You're like, wow, that person's really changed a lot. They've healed a lot. They have their own pact here, their own terms and conditions, right? And our job is to just do our part. So I want you to hear that you can trust that you are aligned with your purpose when you do your work. You are fulfilling your destiny when you do your work. How everybody else gets in line and how everybody else responds to that is their job and their work, right? But you are fulfilling that aspect of things for yourself, whether or not they change in your life. So there are many ways to do this work. And keep in mind, the bottom line is to heal your own pain through deepening your love and acceptance of self. Of course, like that is always the bottom line. Starting the journey with therapy, if you haven't done it already, is a really good idea to begin to unravel, like, what are these patterns? What are you noticing? You might start talking and working with somebody, a therapist, and really be able to get much more self-aware in terms of what's happening. However, for DIYing it, doing it yourself, cord cutting can be a really wonderful tool for you to use and requires you just simply to create time and space and use imagination. So how cord cutting works is that cord cutting can be done with yourself, obviously, or a practitioner, but common methods include visualization. So visualizing the energetic cords between you and the person or situation that you want to dissolve, and then imagining it can be gently severed by a pair of scissors, a sword, a symbolic tool of any type of tool. I often encourage people to get creative with their visualizations or their tools that they're using for cord cutting, because I think it can create the image even with more depth. But remember, the physical, emotional, energetic body responds to the real or imagined. A little bit like how the mice responded to the cherry blossom scent. The threat was not real. It was programmed response, but the threat was not real. It had nothing to do with them, right? There was nothing dangerous happening. So when you visualize something, your being can believe it to be true and act accordingly. Your brain will act accordingly. Your body, your energy system will act accordingly. So affirmations and invocations are another thing you can bring into it while you're doing this visualizing. You can recite specific prayers or an affirmation that calls for cutting the energetic ties and really getting intentional and focused. It can be really powerful for you to prepare this ahead of time before you even get into it, or you can just go with it. But turning it into a ritual or a ceremony is also another way of honoring it and creating the impact and deepening the connection to it. So involving candles, water, or fire, those are sometimes used for cord cutting. As an example, writing a person's name on paper and burning it with the intention of releasing that connection. Those are all powerful ways you can do on your own to really begin the process of releasing these attachments that you might have, these cords. Now, when it comes to receiving support for this type of clearing, as I've mentioned, I have found Emotion Code to be really powerful. I will go ahead and put the book in the show notes because it is something you can learn and do on your own. But it's a method to remove inherited and unprocessed emotions from the body and the field. It was created by Dr. Bradley Nelson, and the Emotion Code is a healing technique that focuses on releasing, as I said, those trapped emotions. And it really has us understanding that trapped emotions are at the root to most all emotional and physical pain. So it works by a practitioner uses muscle testing or kinesiology or any form of biofeedback to identify specific trapped emotions and use a magnetic tool or energy focused intention to release them. This method also targets inherited emotions trapped down through generations. So in Emotion Code, we can also identify the age you were at when an event happened in your own life that created a difficult emotion that became too big to process and now needs to be released. Or when inherited emotions come up in Emotion Code, we can identify the generational line that carries this ancestral trauma. For example, was it your mom and her line of family? Was it your dad and his line of family? Or how many generations do we need to clear? Again, when we clear this for ourselves, we're also clearing this for those before you. So if you are sensitive to feeling and sensing energy, or perhaps you can feel and sense when, loved ones that have passed on are around you. Maybe you have tells when you know they're around, or you can sense and feel them. You will probably sense and feel during Emotion Code when you're clearing ancestral trauma because they all show up, because they're here to get the healing too. It's really quite fascinating and amazing. Another modality to consider is family constellation therapy. So family constellation therapy is a therapeutic approach that explores how unresolved issues in a family system affect current family members, but it involves a group setting where participants represent various family members and allows you to explore these unresolved traumas that start to come to the surface during one of these experiences. It's really kind of interesting. I've been a part of one before where these people in the group have no idea about my family or my past history or generationally what's happened. But suddenly they're reporting things as they're acting it out. They're role-playing. They're reporting things as if they're my ancestor that are true. So it's kind of like this amazing kind of inexplainable phenomenon that happens in the group when you're doing this kind of work. It's really, really interesting. Another known modality is shamanic healing, and ancestral healing rituals are spiritual practices found in many indigenous cultures, right? So shamanic healing in particular connects individuals with their ancestors through guided journeys and rituals and ceremonies to heal ancestral trauma at the soul level. So that is another thing you could look for in your journey of how to heal this stuff for yourself. Also, past life regression therapy can be used to heal generational trauma. So while not specifically an ancestral modality, past life regression therapy developed by practitioners like maybe you've heard of Dr. Brian Weiss. He has the book Many Lives, Many Masters, explores whether unresolved traumas from past lives or from ancestors are affecting the present life. It usually incorporates hypnosis or other types of deep relaxation that allows you to go back into these experiences or connect with your ancestors. There are so many beautiful and amazing modalities that could support you on this journey. There really are so many ways to heal. Sometimes I know it can feel a little overwhelming where to begin, but I hope some of these examples were helpful. I'll stick the resource for the Association of Comprehensive Energy Psychology at the show notes as well, because there's another resource. There's a lot of different energy psychology modalities that also do this work. I want to thank you again for listening in and following the podcast. Don't forget, there is still time to sign up for the group healing that I am offering next week on Monday, October 21st at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard. This is an online Zoom event, and this will be a small group healing. We'll be using modalities such as emotion code now that you've learned a little bit more about it. We'll be working to remove those trapped emotions, see if we can help you get beyond whatever is holding you back. This event does close once it's full. The link will be in the show notes. Have a beautiful rest of your day, and I look forward to connecting next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Into the Work Therapy for Empaths and Seekers. Don't forget to grab your free gift, your Shadow Work Transformation Bundle at michellepoverman.com. I've included everything you need to get started to break through the patterns of self-sabotage and finally start to heal the parts of yourself that are getting in the way of truly reaching your potential. From a powerful meditation designed to help you meet and embrace your shadow self, to the guide that's full of curated prompts and important questions to support you on this journey. This really can be the work for you to unmask the root cause of all the issues you've been experiencing, honestly, and start to feel free to believe in yourself and go for what you want. The link for this free bundle is in the show notes. And if you like this episode, I would be so grateful if you could take a moment and rate, click and follow, and leave a review. Of course, you can always follow me on socials at Michelle Poverman. And keep in mind, as you embark on your journey from spark to brilliance, remember, the universe is always conspiring in favor of your awakening. Everything that's happening is in support of you lighting your own fire within. So until we meet again, may your path be well lit and your heart be guided. Shine bright, seekers. Until next time.